Welcome back, everyone. As usual, we are two dudes talking 80s. I'm John. That's my partner in crime, Lewis.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about something a little bit different for us today. We're going to talk about the transportation we utilized in the 80s. And so we'll get to it in a little bit. But before we get to that, Lou, you recently had an experience with, you went and saw the band Extreme. You had a meet and greet. You had the opportunity to see them and Living Color. A little bit of a review for us before we start.
Sure. So In Living Color just blew my mind. They
Please stop
were.
referring to them as in living color. It drives me nuts.
I'm sorry. It's easier.
Let's
I don't
start Jim
know.
Carrey. Jim Carrey is not in the band.
You don't know that.
I do know that.
He might have actually been there.
He
Um,
wasn't.
but yeah. So Living Color
Thank you.
was absolutely just off the track. So they were great. I was just blown away by how well the singer was still able to sing. And the guitar player still sounded the same way that he did back in the 80s. And
Good old
uh,
Vernon Reed.
yeah, it was really, really great. And then Extreme, yeah, they blew doors. That was really awesome. It was the first time I'd seen either one of those bands. And yeah, the meet and greet was a little disappointing. It wasn't quite what I was envisioning. They really didn't allow, it wasn't like a one-on-one kind of thing where people were getting their autographs signed and stuff. It was just sort of a general Q&A that they were doing with about maybe 40 or 50 people. So, but I was able to get in, a couple of conversations with Nuno and the drummer as well. So that made me happy. That was good.
Very cool. It's three of the original guys. I forgot which is the one that's not original. Is it the bassist or is it the drummer?
For In Living Color or Extreme?
Stop saying in living color. It's driving me
In
nuts.
Living Color.
Stop it.
I
For
think I'm going to do it on
extreme.
purpose now.
For extreme. I think living color is all original.
They looked like they might have been. I really wasn't that familiar with them except for the singer and the guitar player. But they look like it might have been. And yeah, the drummer is more recent for Extreme.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, it sounds like you had a good time.
I
But
did.
we're not, let's talk about our little bit of 80s transportation. So when the
But
80s,
wait.
wait,
You also went to a recent concert that I think fits quite into the topic here.
I went to several. I went to
Well,
three since we last recorded. I went
well, which
to the Lost 80s Live, which was hosted by Richard Blade and had Belinda Carlisle, Wang Chung, Missing Persons. Oh God, I'm trying to think of it. Who else was there? Um, Musical Youth, Passaducci. I'm trying to think, and I saw Fast Times, which is an '80s tribute band, and last night I saw Winger, which I was actually thinking about it, and I think Living Color. I almost said in Living Color. See what you've done? Living Color, I think, is one of the few, but Winger is also one of the rare bands that has all the original members. So great show by Winger. You know, you can't go wrong with Winger. I don't care what anybody says. I think they're an amazing band. The musicianship is always top notch. They played everything. It was a great show. It was Reb Beach's birthday, the guitarist for Winger. Funny thing about that was the very last show ever at the Stone in San Francisco was Winger. I was at that performance, and that also was Reb Beach's birthday. So I've seen him twice now performing on his birthday, and they brought out a big Coors cake, which was pretty cool. Except it was shooting these sparklers up. I hate to say it. I think about like this kind of didn't end well for Great White, so I'm kind of a little uncomfortable. And I'm serious because the whiskey it was at the Whiskey A Go Go, which has been there forever, and you don't know how well that thing's going to hold up for that. So I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nerve wracking till he blew out the sparkler on it, but great show. As far as the Lost 80s Live, those are always good shows. Very short sets. Like Missing Persons, I was shocked. They only played three songs.
That's
which
insane.
kind of blew my mind. And the headliner was Belinda Carlisle, and she's always a great time. I think she played like seven, but a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Great acts, but I didn't do the meet and greet for anybody. I'm not cool like Lewis. He's a cool guy.
Should have done the meet and greet for Winger, man. Should have totally done it.
If you had joined me, I would have done it. But I mean, I've met Kip Winger in the past. I've met Red Beach in the past, so it wasn't that important to me. And then I would have
Yeah, I
been
get
stuck
it.
there. I think I had to be there at like 5 o'clock, and then I would have had to wait till 10 o'clock till their performance. So that would have
Uh,
been kind of a long night. I could have gone next door to the Rainbow Bar and Grill and drank by the Lemmy statue all night. Probably wouldn't have been a good thing. But anyway, let's get back to transportation.
all right.
So, beginning of the 80s, you and I are what, 12 years old?
Yeah, yeah, about
11,
that.
11,
11.
12?
Yeah, 11, 12.
Yeah, probably 12, actually, I'm thinking. So, how were you getting to? We went to Burrell Middle School together. How were you getting there?
Oh, when I went to Burrell, I was riding my BMX bike. It was a Panda. And I didn't see a lot of people with Pandas, and I didn't know if that was because they were just crappy bikes or what, but it was this blue bike, and it had these white like mags. They're called Tough Wheels, made of some plastic composite. And I used to love that thing, man. I rode that thing like to Burrell all the time, and to high school for a little bit actually. So that was my primary mode of transportation to middle school. What about yourself?
I was a bus guy. I took the school bus to Burrell every day, which is kind of weird. I don't remember if I don't think I ever biked it. I don't think I did. It was just too far of a trek. I remember one time we actually biked to the McDonald's near Burrell, and that took forever. Funny story. My sister said, "Oh, buy me some French fries." Of course, we're teenage boys as we're getting home, or preteens. We're getting hungry as we're getting home. I think by the time we got back, there was like six fries for her. Sorry, sis, but yeah, I was a bus guy. I don't, I was trying to think. I was like, God, is there any funny stories or anything about riding the bus? And I couldn't come up with anything. It's really boring.
I actually took the bus as well now that you mentioned that. I did a mix of the two. I remember that, and it's such a weird thing, man, to think that, that we had buses that would just come and pick us up and take us to school. But there was a Sunnybury Park over there that we would meet up at, and uh, we had different bus drivers, but there was one guy that was, sort of a rocker dude, and he would actually crank AC/DC on the bus while we were going to school. And I remember another guy that he decided to be funny one time, and you kept saying, "Play music, play music." So he puts on opera, and he's just cranking opera just to annoy us. And he was cracking up, having a great time with it. But yeah, that's true. I did take the bus as well.
Yeah, I wish I had some interesting bus stories. I just don't remember anything being that interesting. I will share this story. I guess it doesn't count for the 80s, but I'm on, what the hell, I'll throw it in anyway. Um, what year is Star Wars come out? 78?
I think it was 79. I think.
I think you're wrong, but that's okay. Um, so back then I was going to Fiesta Gardens Elementary School,
70, 77.
77. I was trying to
That's what
remember.
it's
I
telling
think,
me.
all right, so 77. I went to summer school, not because I had to or anything, but it was kind of like, hey, let's keep the kids interested, have them do something during the summer. And so I went to summer school. And my sister and her friend Michelle were actually like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, counselors, probably not, chaperones, whatever. And we went, and one day I didn't even know what the movie was about. I hadn't heard anything about. We were going to go see Star Wars as a group, and I'll never forget the theater. I want to say it was in Burlingame. That theater was packed, and it was all school kids to go see the original Star Wars. I'd never seen it. I didn't know anything about it. But while we're waiting to get on the bus at Fiesta Gardens, this kid that was a year or two older than me, I think a year, decided to start picking on me. I don't know what it was about, but just the typical bullying. I thought my sister was going to kill that kid. She grabbed him by his shirt and threw him up against the wall, and I thought for sure she was going to kill him. And you can speak to it. I know you know that my sister back then could be rather intimidating,
A
um,
little bit.
a little bit. But it's just a funny story. It's like, yeah, great. My older sister had to, come in and protect me. I think that's one of the reasons that I've always been very anti-bullying. People bullied me, and it was dumb because I didn't realize, like, I'm a big guy, and I probably could have taken anybody back in elementary school, and then I kind of learned that in middle school. Not that I would ever bully anybody, but if I needed to get in a scrap, I was more than willing once it was middle school. Like my parents always taught me, don't ever start it, but you'll finish it.
That's so awesome. I could just picture Leanne doing that.
So, do you want to tell your Leanne, my sister, story about intimidating you?
Sure, sure, because that actually took place in the 80s. So we were, it must have been sixth grade, and I can't remember how it happened, but you talked me into like getting a ride from your sister home, or I was like stranded or something, and I picked we got a ride home with your sister and her red it was either a Comet or a Maverick, I can't
Maverick.
remember.
It was a red
And
Maverick.
yeah, and then I remember us getting into the car and I'm getting into the back seat and she immediately starts just lighting up and going, or just getting really, really upset and going, I don't understand why I had to come over here and pick you up. And I just cowered in the corner, man. I'm like, oh my God, I hope this woman doesn't kill me.
Yeah, she had a temper back then. Which is funny because the two of you get along so great now, but yeah, your first impression was like, "Am I gonna get murdered today?"
She scared the shit out of me, man.
Good to know. So I also, in the starting in the early '80s, I also had a bike. I told this. I don't know if I told this story before, but I was a big fan of the TV show Chips, and my parents for Christmas got me a Chips bicycle.
Oh,
So it
that's
had this
awesome.
plastic covering around it, like said Chips, and it was made to look like a CHP motorcycle. The funny thing is, years later, I got to know Eric Estrada somewhat and got to hang out with him several times and tell him that story. Like, hey, dude, like I wanted to be you, and I had a Chips motorcycle, which he thought was hysterical. But of course, in middle school, a Chip's motorcycle bike doesn't exactly, scream, you're cool. So I had taken the plastic covering off of it, and I remember buying like wheels from friends, or people would donate it to me. I didn't have any money. Forks, the cool forks and everything, to kind of make it kind of reasonable. And I think for the most part, other than getting riding a family 10 speed later on, I think for the most part that was the only bike I really had during those years. And I used to ride that. That was kind of my weekend thing, was I'd be riding that bike all around.
Wow, you actually sort of hot rodded your bike, man. That's pretty impressive.
No nitrous though.
No nitrous. Oh, well,
And
you're
then,
too
of course,
young.
I take it to 7-Eleven, where we'd go, and play video games at the 7-Eleven, and that was a mode of transportation. What was this the store that had closed? Everyone used to ride their bikes around there. So,
Oh, Gem. The
Gem.
yes, Gem.
Was it Gem or Gemco?
It was Gem. It was
Okay.
Gem. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was like the that was like a playground for us, man. It was just this big sort of department store building thing that was vacant for
Huge.
so many years, man.
Yeah, and it was standalone, so there was nothing next to it.
Right, right. Just parking lot, and I think I've mentioned this before. They used to have like next to the loading dock, it would collect rain when it rained, and you'd have these puddles where it'd be coming up to your knees and stuff, and we'd be riding our bikes trying to see who can make it through without having to fall over and get all wet. And yeah, yeah, I that yeah, Totally remember that.
So, were you like most people forced to have your parents pick you up a lot when you were in middle school?
No, I Manny and Anna Raposo's and Joe Raposo's parents would pick me up a lot when it was raining because we all went to school together, and I'm not sure why it worked out that way, but it tended to be them more than my parents. But other than
Your
that, yeah, it
mom,
was
did
either
your
bus
mom
or
drive?
bike. My mom did drive. Yes.
I don't remember her
Yeah.
driving for some reason.
Yeah, she didn't drive that frequently, but she did drive. She had a license for, many, many years.
My mom had a license for many, many years, but she never drove. She was just terrified of driving, and it wasn't so much the driving part. It was like she was fearful of like how everybody else was gonna react to her, and so she never really drove. I don't remember ever really getting picked up, probably on special occasions or like after basketball practice. Jimmy Stockwell's parents, or dad would take me home after basketball because we missed the bus, right? That kind of thing. But overall, I don't remember getting a lot of rides. I do remember getting driven on weekends and things like that to movies and whatnot, to the mall, that kind of thing. Um, I'll never forget. I want to say I was with a buddy of mine, and we were at in Burlingame, and I don't remember what movie we saw, but we were transported by my aunt and my mother being the passenger, to go see a movie in Burlingame. And
Right?
after the movie, we had some time to kill before they were going to pick us up, and we had met two young ladies. So we're
Okay.
talking, we're thinking we're pretty cool and everything else. And my aunt and my mother pull up and they start honking the horn. Come on, John, it's time to go, and everything like that. All because they knew damn well it was going to annoy me and piss me off, and they went for it, and it did. I just was like, oh my God, I need to be 16. I need to have my own car. This sucks. It was such an embarrassment, and they went for it. They just embarrassed the living crap out of me that night.
That's awesome, man. I don't think I'd heard that one before. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it wasn't at the time. It's very funny now, and it's interesting because it's something that I always was very cognizant about with my own son, right? Like, don't roll up on him when he's talking to girls, kind of give him a space and everything else. And he never wanted that space. He was always fine with me coming up, and I'll never forget one time I think he was in high school, and he just played in a volleyball game. He was talking to some girls, and I stand back, and he looks at me. I said, "Hey, good game." He goes, "What? We don't hug anymore in this family?" I'm like, "Oh, okay." Very different relationship than what I had with my parents. Loved my parents immensely. Miss them every single day. Next year, God, my dad will be, has been gone for almost 30 years now. Next year will be
Damn.
30, which is crazy to think about. But definitely as a teenager, I wanted to have nothing to do with them being anywhere near me, and I wanted to be the cool guy.
I think that's a phase that most of us go. It doesn't sound like Jake went through it, but I
No.
think that's a phase that a lot of us go through, right? A teenage thing where just like trying to distance yourself from your parents and whatnot. Yeah.
So finally at 16, I think at 16, yeah. Which it blows my mind that kids today aren't so dying to get their licenses like we
I
were.
know.
Doesn't it blow your mind?
Yes, yes, it totally does. It makes no sense to me.
I guess because they have Uber and everything else. Let's have a complete stranger take me anywhere I want to go. Sounds like a great idea. Um, did you pass your learner's permit the first time? Did you pass everything?
I think I did pass everything the first time. Yeah, yeah, I did.
I I f- I forgot. I think on my learner's permit, I failed the test the first time, and then I passed it. I think you only took if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought you only took a test for your learner's permit, and then to get the license, you took another test and a driving test. Is that
Right,
right?
right. Yeah, that learner's permit was a written test and that was it.
Yeah, I failed the written test the first time. And then I did pass obviously the driver's test. I think by the skin of my teeth, but I passed.
Yeah, it was the same thing with me. I think it was, I can't remember if it was my learner's permit or my license, but one of the two. It's like if I gotten two more questions, I would have incorrect, I would have failed it. So I also just got in there.
So when you get your permit, obviously you're driving with your parents, and then you get your license. And of course, we're idiots. We think freedom. We're 16. We have freedom. No, we don't. But did your parents loan you a car back then, or how did that work for you?
They didn't. I actually got my license and I was very happy that I did, but then realized that I really didn't have a car to drive. And I would drive sometimes with them, right? If they, needed to go somewhere, or they, my dad got tired from driving, whatever, I would take over. But yeah, I didn't drive until I got my own car when I was 18, and that's when I actually started driving solo.
And what was the first car?
It was my 85 Camaro Z28.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
It it
Round table treated you well, huh?
it did in all those years of saving and whatnot. But yeah, that reeked 80s for sure. And yeah, I had that for a little bit. But I wanted to take a step back. There was one time, it was only one time that I actually went to school on the back of a moped. And it was with, I don't know if you remember him, Steve Boyer, and we were trying to go up the hill on Barneson, going up, right in front of Burrell, and it was me and him, and it was his moped, and it just wouldn't make it. It just started like slowing down until it's like it's not going to make it. So I ended up getting off, and I think he ended up taking off, and then I just walked the rest of the way. I wanted a moped so badly. Oh my gosh. It was like, oh wow, you don't have a license for how to, be able to ride this thing. And because I guess it had pedals that qualified as a bike. And oh man, I wanted one so bad, so bad.
Hmm. I there's a very bad joke which I am not going to tell right now. It's really bad, and they'll cancel me. Like the two people that watch this will cancel me. Uh, but I'm not. I'll tell it off air. But I never. Yeah, I think one time I remember somebody had a moped in my family. I don't remember who, or they were looking to sell it. I don't know why everyone seemed to show up at my parents' house with like stuff to sell, like, hey, we're selling. And I remember we they took, I don't know if we drove it down. I guess we drove it down. I don't know how it worked out, but we went to Gem.
Uh-huh.
And I remember my sister she's getting way too much airtime this week. Um, she decided she was going to drive and I was going to be the passenger. And we went around Gem, and I don't know if you recall, that was quite a trek.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was there, and my mom was just freaking out, going, "Oh my God, they're behind the gem. They've fallen. They're injured. Something happened. It's taking so long." And all of a sudden, she sees us, and my sister is like flying with me, holding on for dear life in the back. Yeah, yeah. So we that was the moped experience I had. I don't remember ever wanting one, but yeah, I did have my moped experience as well. I don't remember you didn't need a license for it. That's so weird.
Yeah, that's at least what I remember everybody saying. It's like, oh, it's classified as a bike, so you don't really need a license for it. And so I just thought that was like the coolest thing. Wow, I can have this thing that, I don't have to pedal, and it's like a little motorcycle. And of course that wouldn't utter coolness, but it's just so weird because that those things really seem to come into fruition in the 80s when they'd been around since like 1912 or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, 1916, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's still pretty impressive. I wasn't aware.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
I picture so everybody that's on that, like back in the day, had like a Who patch. I don't know why, but So after getting my driver's license, I was the cool guy. I got my parents' wood paneled station wagon.
Yes.
Again, I forgot. I want to say one of my uncles convinced my dad to buy it. This thing was the biggest piece of shit. You would have to warm it up for like 15 minutes, you know? So, I mean, you already lost like a quarter of a tank of gas just warming the stupid thing up. Otherwise, it would die on you. Like if you turned it on and just tried to go, like just stop. You're like, oh my God. So, I got to drive that on occasion on weekends. My parents were very limiting on that. I do remember once trying, I didn't have there wasn't a tape deck. There wasn't I don't even know. No, there was no CD players back then, but no tape deck, nothing. So I listened to the radio. Thankfully back then the radio was pretty good. And yeah, it was embarrassing as hell to be driving that stupid thing. I
I
look back
remember.
on it now with some sort of reverence, right? Like, Chevy Chase and me, wood paneled station wagon, wood paneled station wagon. How 80s is that? But yeah, it sucked to be going around like that.
You took what you had, right? I remember that station wagon super well, man. And it was like beige, right? It was like a,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Again, you sort of, that's what you had, and that's what you drove.
So the first car that was for myself, my parents, bless their hearts, actually purchased for me. Um, my dad and I had a conversation. My sister, again, my sister, she worked, I think, as soon as she could. And I remember she worked at an elderly care facility. I don't know what her title was, kind of like a candy striper kind of thing. She's probably gonna yell at me later, say that was not my job title, but whatever. For today, it is. I asked my dad, I said, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to get a job or whatever? And this is the advice I gave my son. You know, he said, you have the rest of your life that you're going to have to work. Why start now? And it was something that stuck with me. And, you know, finally being retired, you know, and not having to work is pretty amazing. It's the first time in my life, I told you this the other day via text. Remember when we were kids, right? We're like, oh man, when we're 16, we're gonna have our license, we're gonna have freedom. No, you don't, because you don't have a car. You've got to work to provide, for that car, for gas or whatever. I didn't, you did. Um, then it's like, oh, I'm 18, I'll be out of high school. Then I'm gonna be, independent and do whatever the hell I want. Well, no, you need a job to be able to do what the heck you want. 21, I can go to bars. Nothing is off limits for me. Okay, great. Yeah, you're 21, but you can't go out, partying every night, though I sometimes tried. Unlike you, because the next day I had to go to work to pay for stuff, right? This is the first time in my life where I kind of feel like that freedom where I have the money, I have the time.
That's
Ah,
that's awesome, man.
it's pretty phenomenal. But anyway, getting back to cars, transportation. So my parents bought from one of my old elementary school teachers a 1969 Ford Mustang, which sounds amazing right now, but back then, like you and I have talked about it, you especially, those were our cars. Like we had these old muscle cars that we didn't fully appreciate back then. And those were the cars we got, and they were cheap. So I got that. It was not in the best shape. It was certainly not, show quality. I remember when it pulled up, I was like, oh my God. And my parents go, here you go. I was kind of disappointed, and I drove it over to my buddy John's house. He's like, dude, are you insane? This is freaking cool. Are you kidding me? This is awesome. And of course, immediately, oh, my friends think this is cool. I guess it is cool. And immediately changed my perspective on it. But yeah, so my first car was a 1969 Ford Mustang.
I remember that one as well. It was white, and I want to say that had red interior, right?
It
Or was
had
it black?
beige,
Oh, was it
beige
beige?
black interior. Yeah. That thing got man, I put it through the ringer. I'll never forget. I bought, these upgraded rims from a buddy of mine, and our next door neighbor used to be an airline mechanic for TWA. Talk about going back a little bit.
Yeah.
And he comes over and just says, "Oh, those aren't the right lug nuts for that car." And I'm like, "He's old. What does he know?" Sure enough, one day my buddy was gonna be going to San Francisco. He actually lived with us at the time. He was gonna go to San Francisco after school for a school project, and they went ahead and I said, "Here, don't go on the motorcycle. Take my car. It's so much safer." So I thought, well, as they're driving, one of the wheels comes off,
Oh no.
and yeah, they hit the center divider, and yeah, it was kind of a nightmare. But so that was my first car, and then my second car later on was in to end the '80s was an '85 Mustang GT, and I did not know how to drive a stick shift, the 5 speed. I'll never forget. I was with my father, and I want to say my aunt was with us to buy the car, but I couldn't drive it. So my dad was driving it home, and he pulls up next to us. And my dad was, you remember, what my dad was like. So my dad starts kind of revving it, like doing this stuff. And he hits the gas, and you see his face go from kind of like trying to be funny to, oh shit. And he zips, and he's like, oh my God, that sucker's got some pickup. Like, yeah, it's an '85 Mustang GT, Dad. Um, Kept waiting and waiting on him to teach me how to drive a stick. Got frustrated with it, said, screw it, I'm going to teach myself. And I just went out and taught myself.
Wow. Wow. Very cool, man.
So after your Camaro, why'd you get rid of that originally anyway?
I found out that it had some issues with it, and I decided to get rid of it. And also the car that I bought after, which is the one I still have now, the '88 Monte Carlo. That was the last year that they were making them, so that sort of also motivated me to get rid of the Z28 and get into my Monte Carlo.
We used to have a joke, and it's probably still accurate today. My roommate Mark and I, we used to say if we ever were going to have open heart surgery, we want to have it on the front seat of Lewis's Monte Carlo because that is probably the most sterile environment we could possibly think of. So, kudos to you in regards to that.
Yeah, I've always been a little bit of a fanatic with my cars.
A little bit of a fanatic.
A little bit.
I hated riding with you when you drove. I hated it because I was always concerned something was going to happen. You were going to get a door ding, something, and I didn't want to be around to witness it, and it scared the crap out of me. That's why I'd be like, "Oh, I'll drive." No, no, come on, man. You always drive. I know. There's a reason for this, and it wasn't because you were a bad driver. It's the scary death of something happening. And I also knew when we arrived somewhere, we'd park and it'd be like, "That's the mall in the yonder distance." Because you would find a parking space 20 miles away to make sure nobody parked next to you or anything else, which, respect to you, but back then, man, it was annoying. So annoying.
I was looking out for your cardiovascular health, man.
Yeah, apparently it worked. So cool. So
That's so funny.
if you knew now what you knew back then. I know I did that really poorly. If you knew then what you know now, would you have kept the Camaro?
No, no, I still would have gone for with the Monte Carlo.
I would have kept the Mustang, the '69. I would have got rid of the Mustang GT,
Yeah,
definitely. I
yeah.
had so many problems with that car. I had more problems with that car than any car I've ever had. It used to overheat, and nobody could figure it out why. And I remember in the late '80s, we were recording, and I want to say in San Francisco, and me and Mike were the two guitar players. We were driving back, from our recording session. And the thing started to overheat. Well, it was too hot to put any water or coolant into it, so we decided we'd go eat. And I'll never forget this. We went to this. Hey, there's an Italian restaurant right there. Let's go. We ordered pizza and garlic bread, and the garlic bread had fresh garlic. And we had been recording earlier in the day, and now it's night. It's freezing cold, and we drove home with the windows wide open because our breath was so disgusting from that fresh garlic, which is delicious when we ate it. But later on, we're like, oh man, yeah, this is how you used to roll down the window, kids. And that's how we made it home. So
That's
anyway,
funny, man.
so real quick, I think we only got a little bit of time left. Um, I know your big wish in life, or your big regret for your, I guess it wasn't really even 80s transportation, but you always wanted a big wheel.
I always wanted a big wheel. Yeah, that was more in the 70s, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's the one thing I feel that in life I was slighted that I was absolutely entitled to.
All right. So we're gonna have to find something that will make an adult size big wheel for Lewis so we can get him back.
They've got him out there, man.
They do? All right.
Oh
Well,
yeah, they're scary.
in January, I know somebody has a birthday. I'll be looking for it. All right. Anything else you want to add about transportation before we get cut off on this bad boy?
No, man, I think we're running out of time, so it's probably a good point to cut it off here.
All right. Well, thank you guys as always for watching. We hope you enjoyed tonight. It went really, really quick. Please hit us with a like, hit us with a subscribe if you haven't done so already. And little brother, take us out.
Peace out.
Thank you guys.